What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about a couple of things, but first off we got to get the most important thing settled, and that is that I am not a typical fuzzy helmet wearer of the R3. I watched Jixabraw's video earlier, and there were some comments about people who ride R3s and fuzzy helmets, and I was like, I do not resemble these comments. So first things out of the way, hope there aren't a lot of fuzzy helmet wearers. I don't even know where you buy a fuzzy helmet. But the thing I did want to talk about today was the other week Joe Rogan had Mike Rowe on his podcast, and they were talking about toxoplasmosis. And Joe has talked about toxoplasmosis multiple times now that I've heard of, and he usually talks about it in the typical terms of it's spread by cat feces, and motorcyclists will get infected by toxoplasmosis, and that's why we're more risk takers, or bigger risk takers, and we don't know what's good for ourselves, or we don't know how to maybe mitigate the risk, or we don't know we're infected, and so we end up doing risky things on motorcycles and either getting very injured or dying as a result of this parasite. And so I was just curious, since this is at least the second time I've heard him talk about this, and it seems like Mike Rowe is pretty knowledgeable about it, and I've never heard any motorcyclists actually really talk about toxoplasmosis infections very much. And so I was just curious, like, is there any correlation? Is any of this true, right? Fair thing to ask. And if it is true, and if any of it is true, then how true is it, right? Is it like a little true? Is it a big problem to be worried about? How relevant is this to me? And we got all these cars in front of us. Not very fun. Maybe we'll pull over at the tiger rescue. Ooh, we'll look at tiger rescues really quick. Let's see. Oh no, it says exit only. That's okay. Nobody has to know. Nobody has to know. Let's see. Tigers. Let's see if we can see some tigers. I'm not sure if you can see any tigers in the street. I'm pretty sure you can't. But we'll look really quick. No tigers are out today. Okay, so anyway, the question is, how relevant is it to us? Like, how big of a concern is it? And so I did a little bit of searching, and I'll put some articles in the description of this that I looked at, and I'll put some screenshots up as we go through this. But there was a study done. Well, the short answer is yes, there are studies that seem to indicate motorcyclists might have a higher infection rate of toxoplasmosis, or they might have the antibodies for this. And you know, so I don't know if they can say definitively that this infection causes you to ride. I'm not sure what the rules are about directly correlating things together, but there seem to be studies, multiple studies, like at least 5, I think, that were done that all seem to indicate that yes, people with toxoplasmosis infections and riding motorcycles tend to get in more trouble, and maybe that, yeah, even like they tend to ride motorcycles more, right? People infected by this, or with the antibodies for this, should I say, because that's the key thing. So first off, I just looked at what even is toxoplasmosis, right? And so it's a parasite that Joe Rogan talks about coming from cat feces, like crazy cat ladies, right? Where they get the cat feces somehow on their hands or whatever, and then they eat without washing their hands adequately or whatever. But there are a lot more ways to get toxoplasmosis. So you can get it through foodborne illness, basically. So my impression of this was like, you could almost think of it like salmonella, right? Like something from undercooked chicken, right? So like mishandled food preparation, not washing your hands. It sounds like toxo actually comes from rodents or small animals or things that cats tend to catch and eat, and then it goes into their like guts and you know, becomes a parasite maybe in their whatchamacallit, in their intestines and stuff, right? And then it comes out the back end and humans have to pick it up and move it, and that's how humans get it, right? So it's not necessarily that like cats generate this this sickness, it's that, you know, it's what they're eating. So you can get it through multiple ways, more than just cats, right? So the first thing is, how at risk are you as a motorcyclist? And I thought, listening to Joe, I'm completely safe because I don't have a cat, and I'm not a cat person, and I'm not dating a crazy cat lady, right? So I was like, oh, cool, I'm safe. And that's not entirely true, right? So from food preparation, things like that, you could still get it. Okay, so how much of the population now has it? Well, in some countries and some places, it can be up to 60%. So that's actually surprisingly high. And those tend to be more of the third world countries, things with maybe lower health standards or food preparation standards, right? In the US, we have all these probably 3-letter organizations that manage health, like food care standards and whatnot. So more at risk of it probably in a third world country than a first world country. So up to 60% of some populations. I think in the United States it was 11% had it, which was surprisingly high to me, because as far as like people I know, I wouldn't say that 11% of the people I know own cats. I actually know very few people that own cats. I know a lot more people who are into dogs, so sort of interesting. That it seems to be, I mean, I guess we could look at statistics of how many people are cat owners versus how much of the US population has this. But the other thing was, I was under the impression from listening to him, like, oh, this must be a parasite that lives in you and you never get rid of, right? Or you must need to like figure out you have it and then get medication and get help, and that is doesn't seem to be the case. So it seems like a lot of people don't really have many effects of a toxoplasmosis infection. It sounds like a lot of people might get flu-like symptoms of just soreness, achiness, maybe it was low fevers, I don't know. I'll put the list up here so you can see it, but it was pretty mild symptoms, maybe in some compromised age groups, like really young people, old people, like bad immune systems, maybe they have you know, worse, but the average of the population may never even know they get this infection. And it sounds like it clears on its own. Like, you can maybe get medication or you can seek medical treatment to try to get rid of it, to make it go away faster, but it sounds like most people, they're not living with this every single day, and it's not, you know, a parasite that's killing them or something like that. So that was kind of interesting. And, you know, a lot of these studies are basing things they do off of who has the antibodies for toxoplasmosis gondii, or whatever it's called. So I read one study, and it came out in 2024, August 19th or something like that, 2024, and it was studying toxoplasmosis in this small place in Iran, and it was also CMV and this one other, it was like herpes something, HMS or HMV, it was something like that. And so basically trying to see, like, okay, toxo seems to be linked to more risky behavior, and the conclusion that I saw was really toxo seems to be linked to more intensive motorcycle injuries. So you know, what they seem to be indicating is it was like a 2.6 times higher, I forget the numbers, but it was like you know, you might ride a motorcycle still without having toxo. Actually, the vast majority of people still have no toxoplasmosis exposure, are still riding motorcycles. So it doesn't cause you to ride a motorcycle. What it might do is, if you already are kind of predisposed towards being an adrenaline junkie, it might just make it more. So if you have a toxo infection, you might just end up with a worse motorcycle accident. But there's still plenty of people having motorcycle accidents and riding motorcycles who have never had toxoplasmosis, given that they do not have the antibodies for it. So where are we left with that? So vast majority of motorcyclists have never had toxoplasmosis, and even a lot of motorcyclists in accidents have never had toxoplasmosis. It tends to be, from what it looks like, from these numbers and stuff, from these studies, it looks to be that you're likely to have a more severe accident if you have had this, perhaps. So maybe that's not super surprising. But one thing they talked about in this Mike Rowe and Joe Rogan interview, where they talked about how mice with toxoplasmosis will just walk up to cats, right? They'll lose that sense of fear, right? Mice and rats, they should be afraid of cats because cats would kill them. But they lose that kind of thing in their brain where they're like, oh, this is a predator, this is, you know, going to kill me, this is bad, and I should run away. And so they were talking about this in relation to cars and how people drive or how people ride their motorcycles, right? Like Joe was talking about when I drove my big giant Lexus versus driving my M3, how the M3 I drove it so much crazier, and the Lexus just almost lulled me to sleep. It was so plush and cozy and stuff, right? And it's almost like when you have the high performance equipment, you should use it, and you feel bad not using it, and you know, you just have such a propensity towards riskier behavior. The more high performance machine you have, the more capability you have, right? And so I definitely think that that's true. And partially, you know, the sound of a motorcycle, man, it can drive you crazy. It can just, you know, you start revving it out and it just sounds so good, especially if you have like a loud exhaust on it, or you've done some stuff so it's really to your liking. And I mean, that's why you see so many motorcyclists just, you know, they're going down the road, pulling their clutch in, like just revving. And it's like, why are you, you know, people be like, why are you just revving it? It's like, man, because the sound is so good. And you know, you feel bad like not using it, not splitting lanes, not going, you know, however fast you can go down the highway. Not that I've ever done it, but you know, it's just, I understand that notion. And I think especially if you have that propensity where it's like, you know, maybe you know, a multitude of factors, right? You've got, you're not just on a 50cc scooter, right? Maybe you're on like something kind of sporty, even if it's, you know, still like an R3, or it's like, oh, you know, this thing handles amazingly well, and its capabilities so much outdo what I'd be capable of putting it to. You know, what the streets, this thing is still much more capable than a lot of cars out here on the road. And so you can just push it and it will outperform, and it will get you places faster and with a lot more thrill. And especially as you move up, right, to 600,000 cc, whatever, it's just more thrill, more power. And so definitely, if you have that propensity, I see what they're saying. It makes a lot of sense to me. And that's where I think motorcycle selection is really important, you know. Just getting something where, you know, you think about it and you're like, am I able to handle this responsibility? Is this going to make me go crazy? And you know, you just gotta be real with yourself and what you know about yourself and what you can handle. So anyway, I hope this helped. We might end up talking more about this Yeah, later, Dave. Oh man, I don't know if I mentioned yet to you guys, but it is December and it is 70 degrees out. We don't really have any sun, but man, I love this weather this time of year. You get some cool breeze still. We've been in like the 40s, 30s, even down to the 20s a couple times already this year. So when we get days like this, oh man, it's just so nice to go out and ride. I love it. I love it. Got the, just doing the hoodie, right? No jacket, body armor. So there have been plenty of times when I have done things on the road, and you know, maybe it's just like a second later, maybe it's later after I'm done riding, but I think back about it, I'm like, man, that was so stupid. You know, even if it's just like, oh, I've made a turn and, you know, I just didn't look, you know, as much as I should have, or I just kind of did something where I assumed the car wouldn't be there, something like that. And it's like, man, you know, you just think about it, it's like you make one dumb mistake and it can end in a really bad situation out here on a motorcycle. And in one of these studies they were talking about, it was, I forget the exact number, but it was over 40% of all like trauma injuries in the world are from motorcycles. And I was just like, that's crazy, man. And they attribute some of it to alcohol, obviously. That can be drunk drivers and whatnot. But I just thought that was a pretty crazy statistic. And you know, what they talked about, where it's like the mouse coming right up to the cat, not being afraid. It's like, man, you think about out here on these streets, some of the vehicles that are out here. I mean, where I'm at, we see a ton of these log trucks where it's just 18-wheelers coming, and they've just got a ton of logs on them. Man, if they lose one log, I mean, it's all over. Now, it's really unlikely they'll lose a log, but like, oh, look at all this gravel here. You know, it's like, who's doing this? Who's in charge? And you know, even just a big truck like that, you know, versus a motorcycle, so you don't stand a chance. You don't stand a chance even against like a Honda Civic or an Accord. And yet we're all so used to it that we don't really take it seriously. You know, you think about just driving on the road. You think about just driving on the road, and you know, sometimes I'll see those mobile homes or those like prefabbed homes coming down the interstate where they've, you know, they're taking up 2 lanes, maybe even like 2.5 lanes down these interstates. They got flagger guards all around, and meanwhile you got like someone in like a little Civic who's just like, you know, late, and they're just like dying to get around them, and they're just like squeezing past them or whatever. I mean, you see the craziest stuff, and it really is true that it's like in our brains we've gotten more used to it, and we just don't really sense maybe some of the danger, or it's like, you know, I see 18-wheelers facing the wrong direction and on their side all the time on the side of the road, and all sorts of crazy stuff. And it's like, you kind of just don't think of it as dangerous, especially when you're behind glass, or, you know, maybe even behind a helmet, like they talk about, where they say, you know, Joe and Mike were talking about this, where motorcyclists wearing more gear were also more likely to take more risks. And he talked about in safety briefings how after so many safety briefings they stopped taking it seriously, and gotta watch out, you never know, she could have gone. You know, after so many safety briefings, they just stopped taking it seriously, right? And after like 2 years of going through all these safety briefings, they're like, what the heck? Like, why are we getting all these little injuries and stuff as we film this show, Dirty Jobs? And you know, the truth of the matter was they just got complacent, right? They heard it, but they're like, we've heard all this before. And that's why they say riding a motorcycle, the most dangerous year is usually not your first year riding. It's usually, you know, year 3 or something like that, where you've ridden for a little bit, you're comfortable now, you don't take it as seriously, right? You're out here messing around on the road, you're trying to pop wheelies when you can't do it, you're not practicing. good techniques and maneuvers anymore. You're just kind of taking it all for granted. You're like, I've been safe for 2 years, so I'll be safe for another infinitely long number of times. So it's a good thing to keep in mind. I don't think it's necessary to go out and get tested for toxo, but I think it is a good thing to keep in mind. You know, there are things, whether it's emotional things or whatever, that can affect us out here on these streets as we ride. And always a good idea, make sure you're in the right headspace to be riding. So with that, that's gonna end this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope it starts some good discussion. Let me know what you think. Obviously, by no means am I a doctor or anything like that, but I don't think it takes a genius to read one of these articles and come to some conclusions. Hilariously enough, one of the article's conclusion was that they need more money to do more research and do more of these studies. So if that isn't classic, I don't know what is. So anyway, thank you all for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.